Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Embracing Wisdom with Stacy. Let's talk about compassion today. Let's talk about loving kindness. Let's talk about living in alignment with the beautiful yoga principle known as Ahimsa, which is non-harming. Let's talk about all those things. What does that look like practically? Now, we can read about Ahimsa, we can listen to it, we can learn about it, but until we actually put this principle into our daily life, we really aren't understanding the full capacity of it. And really, it starts with ourselves. If we become harming to ourselves in thoughts, words, and actions, being critical, being negative about ourselves, feeling less than, feeling unworthy, feeling that we don't deserve, feeling that we should give to others before giving to ourselves, we are actually causing harm. And when we practice that enough, we might overcompensate by saying, well, I'm so kind to everybody else and I would never harm somebody else. But that's not always the case, because when we don't take care of ourselves, when we don't practice ahimsa for self, we actually then create this ripple effect that happens whether we throw love or hate into the lake of life. But we actually teach people, look, this is the value that I place upon myself, so therefore you don't need to value me. And I've learned over the years that it's so important to self-love and to self-nurture and to self-care and to put yourself at the top of the list. And that's not selfish. That's actually teaching people how to treat you, teaching people what you're deserving of. And that when you practice radical self-love and radical non-harming, you are actually creating an energy that says, this is how I expect to be treated, and this is who I am. I am at my essence, love, and anything beyond that, I don't want to participate in. So when we think about compassion, this is my best description of compassion that I've come up with over the years. Compassion is feeling something for somebody else. I feel compassion for people who fill in the blank. Empathy is where we have a shared experience. So I work with a lot of people with traumatic brain injuries. I have compassion for their life. I have compassion for their struggles, for who they are. I don't have a traumatic brain injury, therefore I don't have empathy to share that experience with them. Now, when my kid's dad died years and years ago and they were young people, I had compassion for them. It was unfair that they would have to live their adult life without a father. It wasn't until my dad died myself that I could have that shared experience of empathy. And now we get caught up in this. What is empathy? What is compassion? But that's the simplest way. Empathy is something shared. If you have not shared that person's experience, you're practicing compassion. Okay. I have a child with a disability. Not everybody does. So empathy comes when I can relate to another mom who has similar struggles, but somebody who's living on the outside of raising a kid with a disability, you have no idea what it's like. You can say, I have empathy for that, but you really don't. You have compassion for that. It's a big difference, and I could step on my soapbox and go for hours talking about that, but we'll leave it at that. But compassion for yourself is giving yourself grace. It's loving yourself. It's demanding that you speak kindly to yourself, that you look in the mirror and you can notice the beauty or the strength or the resilience and not the crow's feet and the gray hair and the extra pounds and the sagging skin. That's not compassion. And it may sound silly to just pinpoint little things that we really have no control over when it comes to aging, but that's how micromanaged we become as we become more self-critical. We look at what we don't have. We start to compare and contrast and compete. That is not ahimsa at all. It is very, very harming to do that. So then we think about compassion, ahimsa, non-harming, with other people. It's the judgment that we have. We see somebody on the street that's different than us, and so we have an inner dialogue, or we even maybe even say the words, this person is this person is that. We label them. I learned years ago that labels are one of the worst things that we can do. It's the worst thing we can do. Lose the labels, get rid of the labels. Yes, labels are important in some ways. I am a mom. That is a label. I am a meme. That is a label. I am a yoga teacher. Another label. But it is not the essence of who I am. And so when we label somebody else, we are then identifying them as that, not as a beautiful being, not as a person with a soul, not as a person with their own struggles, but that we are judging them. When we judge, that's harming. That leads itself to throw in a pebble to the lake of life that is difference. It is separation. It is calling out somebody for who they are, and then you're different. So then we create this chasm of space between us, and that lends itself to violence and to harm. So that to me is like a great catch point to say, okay, when I'm out in the community and I'm out taking a walk or I'm out in the grocery store and I see somebody that's different from me, will I judge them? Now, this is where life today becomes very sticky. We have labeled ourselves as either right or left, Republican or Democrat. We have separated ourselves from the other side, which is a defense mechanism that we have, right? And so it's very hard for one side to see the goodness in the other because they have their whole laundry list and narrative of what the other side is really like. Now we see that in action on the news. If you choose to watch the news, we read about it. We see the effects of separation and divisiveness and lack of ahimsa. We see the harming and the violence. And if you can't look at those images and see violence, I don't know what to tell you because it's violent. And so, as an individual living in a greater world, what is my responsibility to create a world that is non-harming and non-violent? How can I practice ahimsa for myself first, for people in my close proximity, people in my life, people in my community? And then how can I practice ahimsa in the greater world? Well, I'm going to go all the way back to myself. It starts within. It starts with how I view myself. It starts with the thoughts and words I have about me, because that's how I'm teaching people to treat me, to view me. If I view myself as unworthy, then certainly everybody else would view me as unworthy. And that then lends itself to create separation because this group over here is worthy and I'm not. And so it starts with the thoughts that I have about myself. It starts with me. Now, if I practice compassion for myself and grace and love and non-harming, then I'm throwing in a pebble into the lake of life that is value, that is worthiness, that is love, that is grace, that is compassion. And that, I believe, will ripple out. And so when we think about ahimsa, it can be like a very practical thing. Like, of course, I'm not going to harm somebody. I'm not going to go out and harm an animal. But it's more than that. It's the inner essence of who we are. It's the inner narrative. Now, when I first became a yoga teacher, I'll tell you a funny story about ahimsa. I thought, and many people do, who dive into this yoga world, is that, oh, I cannot eat an animal because that is harming and violent. That is not ahimsa. And that's fine if that's your belief. I believed it too. But then I started to realize that by not giving myself proper nutrients that my body needs, not yours, but mine, I was actually harming myself. I was becoming harming to myself because I was standing on a principle that I misunderstood. And so over time, I began to integrate more meat into my diet again, and I felt amazing. My body responded well, and I knew this isn't ahimsa. This isn't what it's about. It's about my relationship to me first, my relationship to others. So, yes, I do eat animals, but I'm grateful, and I choose proper animals. I choose ones that are grown ethically, and I bless the animal, and I'm grateful for the animal. I don't just sit in my car after a drive-through and suck down a greasy cheeseburger. I'm grateful for the animal's life. And there's a big difference. It's the energy in which you approach what you're eating. So, to capture ahimsa in a practical way, it starts with your thoughts. It starts with when you first get up in the morning and you creak and you groan and you hobble to the bathroom, what are your thoughts? Are you grateful to have another chance to live another day? Or are you grumbling about aging? Are you grumbling about your hips? Are you grumbling about your back? When you pour your coffee and you sit down in the morning, are you complaining about the lack of sleep that you had and what a loser? You shouldn't have been staying up so late. You shouldn't have done this. You shouldn't have that. And yourself berating yourself. That's harming. That's not ahimsa. And then as you go about your day, you continue to practice ways that don't serve your greatest good. That's harming. And then you go out and you judge other people. That's harming. And then you live in a culture that supports harming other individuals, that is okay with it. That is not ahimsa. So it begins with you, your beautiful heart. And I will say, as we dive into this topic throughout the month in my classes, we're going to be looking at our actions too. We're going to be looking at, and this is speaking right to me. Do I eat enough? Do I take the time to eat? Am I eating the proper things? Am I moving appropriately for my body? Am I giving my body the proper rest? Am I giving myself an hour to decompress at the end of the day instead of continuing to work until I drop in bed? Those are also ways that we practice or don't practice ahimsa. And so we're going to dive deeper into this topic in my classes. I'll be writing a couple blog posts around that as well. So be sure to look out for those. And in the meantime, watch your thoughts, watch your actions, and watch your words, starting with yourself. That is where it all begins. Take care, and I will see you or listen to you or pop in and say hello to you throughout the week on my social media or my email or my text. And in the meantime, I'll see y'all next week. All right, take care. Be well. Bye.